Imagine standing in a place where the cold bites deeper than anything you've ever felt, where the sun barely rises and silence stretches for miles. No electricity, no running water, no human soul in sight, just a tent, you, and 30 days of survival in the frozen wilderness of the Arctic. Could you handle it? That's exactly what I set out to do, and trust me, it was like nothing I could have prepared for. When I first landed in the Arctic tundra, the sheer isolation hit me like a wave. I remember stepping out of the small bush plane, its engine noise slowly fading as it left me alone in this vast, white expanse. It was eerily quiet, almost too quiet. The cold, bone-chilling. Temperatures dipped below -40 degrees Fahrenheit, and the only shelter I had was a single tent, a thin barrier between me and the merciless environment. The first challenge was setting up camp. Even with gloves, my fingers felt frozen within minutes, making it nearly impossible to pitch the tent. Every action took twice as long as it should. I quickly realized this wasn't just a camping trip. This was survival. The Arctic cold is relentless. It's the kind of cold that sinks into your bones and refuses to leave. During the first night, despite layers of thermal clothing and a sleeping bag rated for extreme temperatures, I shivered uncontrollably. Sleep was nearly impossible. I lay there, staring at the tent's ceiling, listening to the wind howl outside. The silence would have been peaceful if it weren't for the constant reminder that this place could kill me if I let my guard down. The days that followed, well, they were all about managing the cold. I had to constantly move to stay warm. But here's the kicker. Moving too much made me sweat, and in the Arctic, sweat is dangerous. If your clothes get wet, they freeze, and hypothermia isn't far behind. It was a delicate balance of activity and rest, but the real struggle was the mental game. After the first week, the silence became deafening. I hadn't spoken to anyone, hadn't heard a voice, a car, or even a bird. Nothing, just the crunch of snow underfoot and the occasional cracking of ice in the distance. It's strange how your mind starts to play tricks on you in that kind of isolation. There were moments when I thought I heard someone calling my name or saw shadows moving on the horizon. But of course, no one was there. The Arctic makes you confront yourself in ways you never thought possible. Surviving in the Arctic isn't just about staying warm, it's about eating. My supplies were limited, and hunting in such an environment is no small feat. After days of scanning the horizon, I finally spotted a hare, its white fur almost invisible against the snow. Stalking it, though, that was a challenge. Every crunch of snow underfoot risked spooking it, and I couldn't afford to lose any opportunity for food. After what felt like hours of slow, calculated movements, I managed to take the shot. That night, I ate well, but each meal felt like a victory over nature. In all the struggle, there were moments of beauty that took my breath away. One night, as I stepped out of my tent, the sky lit up with a spectacle that words can hardly describe. The Northern Lights. Waves of green, purple, and blue danced across the sky in a mesmerizing display. It felt like the universe was putting on a show just for me, reminding me that even in the harshest environments, there's magic. That sight. It made everything, the cold, the fear, the isolation, feel worth it. It was a reminder of how small I was in this vast, untamed world. But there were also dark days, literally. As I entered the third week, the Arctic winter began to set in fully, and daylight became scarce. The sun would rise for only an hour or two, casting a dim, pale glow before sinking back below the horizon. The rest of the time, pure darkness. It was disorienting, like living in an eternal night. The only light came from my small lantern and the occasional moonlight reflecting off the snow. The lack of sunlight played with my mind. I lost track of time. My body ached for warmth and rest, but sleep came in short, restless bursts. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, unsure if I had slept for an hour or 10. The isolation, the endless cold, the hunger, they all gnawed at my sanity. There were moments when I thought about giving up. I would look out at the endless expanse of snow and think, what am I doing here? I could have been in the comfort of my home, surrounded by warmth, food, and people I love. But every time those thoughts crept in, I reminded myself that I was here for a reason, to test my limits, to see what I was truly capable of. The turning point came when a storm hit in the middle of my 4th week. The wind howled like a beast outside my tent, threatening to tear it apart. Snow piled up so high, I thought I would be buried alive. For hours, I held onto the tent poles, trying to keep it from collapsing. That night, I truly felt like the Arctic was trying to break me. When the storm passed, I stepped out into a world covered in fresh snow, the air crisp and clean. It was like a rebirth. I had survived, and from that moment on, I knew I could make it to the end. By the time I reached the 30th day, my body was exhausted, but my spirit was stronger than ever. As I packed up my tent and prepared to leave, I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, pride, and a touch of sadness. The Arctic had tested me in ways I never imagined, but it had also shown me the beauty of solitude, the power of nature, and the strength within myself. I boarded the small plane, watching the icy landscape fade into the distance, knowing that I had survived 30 days in one of the most unforgiving places on Earth. So could you survive 30 days in the Arctic with just a tent? Maybe, maybe not. But if there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that we're capable of far more than we think, especially when pushed to our limits. If you enjoyed this adventure, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Your support means the world to me, and it's what keeps me going on these wild journeys. Comment below with your thoughts. What would you have done differently? And where should I go next?